There's lots of lore about giants in that whole area. Not just the battle with the red-haired giants.
Hey, you guys, this is Brandon here. Welcome to another episode of Unrefined Podcast, man. We have a treat for you today. I want to introduce one of our new co-hosts who's going to be in and out. He's actually launching a podcast himself. His name is BT Wallace.
Hey, guys.
It's interesting. We have both the same name. I'm BT too, so we call him BT and we just call me BS. Anyway, all right. Yeah, that was corny. Yep, I know it. Anyway, and then I have my wonderful co-host, Lindsy, here. How you doing, Lindsy?
Hey, guys. Doing great. We're really excited to have MK Davis back with us today to talk about a subject he hit on a little bit last time he was here, but is going to go into hopefully more detail this time. How you doing, MK?
I'm good. How are you, Lindsy?
Great. It's good to have you back. Any big guy sightings or anything interesting on the Bigfoot front lately?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things on the national front. You know, there's been these train riders that took a phone video of a Bigfoot off in the distance, walking. You know, you probably seen it.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool.
It's I don't think anybody's been able to prove one way or another with it, but it's
Cool.
We'll put it on your camera. You can figure it out.
It's getting harder and harder.
Is it?
That's new technologies, AI technologies and stuff. People.
We don't fake anything.
Deep fake stuff.
Just about. And it's about you know a time period where it's gonna get just very, very difficult to discriminate.
Yeah, it's one of those times when I wish analog was still in. Because what's happening, I don't know if you know about this, MK, we're even in the podcast world. A lot of these apps are warning us that we need to be careful with our voices because people can take our voices off the podcast and use them. So, yeah, it's getting really scary out there. Yep. Deep fake stuff. Yep. So, we're going to dive into our topic today. We talked with you last time, about the big guy, and it was awesome, and about all those cool stories you have. Today, we want to touch in your wheelhouse about the Lovelock Cave and the red-haired giants, and basically anything hands-on about the Nephilim and your experiences with that. And we are ready to hear some awesome stories. So, where do you want to start? You want to start with Lovelock Cave, MK?
That sounds good to me.
Yes, sir. That sounds good. So tell us what led you there, what got you involved in that whole experience.
Well, my forte, my opus, has been the Patterson Bigfoot film.
Mm-hmm.
And after you've spent enough years to where you're fairly well convinced that it is an authentic film, then, you begin to ask those questions like, what is it? What's the nature of it? And you start to look other places. You widen out some. And if you widen out very much, it's almost inevitable that you're going to hear about or perhaps even go and yourself and see for yourself the red-haired giants of Lovelock Cave, which is a legendary story that is people know it far and wide.
Mm-hmm.
The famous battle between the Paiutes and the cannibalistic red-haired giant, and that's I just left Bluff Creek and rode all the way over there. It was a seminal moment, where that was my point where I began to widen out, carry my interest some of the other places.
The MK.
That whole. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the Sarah Winnemucca. You'll probably get into her, I'm sure, but just her story is kind of the considered the definitive story on this. would you say? Or
Yeah, I'd say pretty much so, and that's because of her stature with her people. She was the daughter of a chief, Chief Winnemucca.
Mhm.
They named the town Winnemucca, Nevada, after him. Uh, uh, you know, well known for his honesty and trustworthiness, and her as well.
Mm.
And she worked hard in behalf of her people, trying to get the standards of living and everything up for her people.
Mm.
And she wrote several books. She wrote a book. This particular book, My Life Among the Paiute, contained that information about the red-haired giant.
Mm.
And it was kind of stunning information, really. It when you talk about cannibalism and things like that, actually hunting people.
Yeah.
See, the Paiutes call them Numatukatas,
Mm.
which means people eaters.
Wow.
Sitika is another name for them, but it's really just the same name, mentioning something else they ate, which was
Yeah,
tule
the
reeds.
Mm.
Yeah, Tika was just a short form of Tikata. It was a tule reed eater.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the Paiutes weren't really a vicious tribe like, say, the Apaches, or what was that other one that used to go into Mexico and had a slave trade? I can't remember, but
Comanche.
the Comanche, yeah. The Paiutes were actually a pretty peaceful tribe. So for them to come up with a story is really, that in itself is kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting. They actually went to war on the side of the United States during the Mexican War.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, they actually were. But then, as soon as they came back victorious, they put them on a reservation.
I know. That's
Yeah.
one of the awful things about history. Yeah, people talk about all the victims and oppressiveness. Man, the Native Americans got the worst deal of anybody, in my opinion. They just still get a worse deal. But yeah, fight for us, and then we'll put you in prison.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Chief Winnemucca, he there's actually a connection with Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
Really?
Yeah, the Natchez said about themselves that they came from the Pacific Northwest, and they came across, down to the Mississippi River, and then down to the lower Mississippi River. And Chief Winnemucca's son is named Natchez.
Mm.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, that is very interesting.
Yeah, so the migrations that took place way back in the day, but a lot of the archaeologists and the anthropologists don't acknowledge that.
Mhm.
But they most certainly did a lot of traveling. The lower Mississippi River Valley, was populated by people from up north in Ohio and all around up that way.
I had
Excuse me.
heard that Natchez claimed to hold sway up at least to the Ohio at one point, and I know Kigualtam that DeSoto encountered seemed to be a pretty powerful chiefdom, kingdom, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, they were a naval
Mhm.
force.
Yeah, which for the listeners out there, what's interesting, we're talking about Mississippi, and if you go down to the lower corner of the state, that's where Natchez. That was actually one of the first places that was settled in Mississippi. Was that area that we're talking about down here? Jeff Davis of Civil War fame actually had a plantation down there, and a lot of interesting things. So the Natchez were there, and they were spread from all the way down close to Louisiana, all the way up to Ohio. So they had a pretty incredible, I guess, empire.
Well, it's interesting too that the Natchez, Mississippi, has the very first published report of a Bigfoot.
Oh, wow.
This was back in when I forgot, was it the early 1700s?
Yeah.
It's when the French were in there. Frenchmen logged it into their logbook that they had been attacked a couple of times in camp by this. He called it a beast or something like a beast. The description fit the description of a Bigfoot, but it terrorized them for a good while.
Yeah.
Ran off with large animals, like sheep.
It's kind of like the story that happened up in Mount St. Helens and the Monkey Men.
Mm.
So that Natchez this would be the third year they've had this Bigfoot birthday bash.
Mm. Wow.
Nice.
I had no
Which is
idea.
Well, what's so cool about it and crazy at the same time is when you think Bigfoot, you immediately think up where BT is up in Oregon and Washington, the Pacific Northwest, or maybe in Tennessee in the Appalachians, but never South Mississippi.
Yeah, there's a lot of wilderness.
Well, I
down
think that's
there.
because
Yeah.
they call it skunk ape down there, isn't it?
Well, no,
Yeah,
there's a difference.
maybe. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, MK, there's a difference between skunk apes and Bigfoot, right?
Well, I mean, people argue that. I really don't know for sure, but if some of the photos that I've seen are real, I'd say yes, there is.
Mm.
Mm.
It's you don't have a lot to go on. The evidence is not something where you can reconstruct a whole bunch of history or a whole bunch of anatomy. But there's a few photos that seem to be real, and if they are, then you're looking at something that's different down in the swamp. They got to certainly have a different foot.
Really?
Yeah.
Do they look different? I mean, and obviously they smell bad, but so do Bigfoot sometimes. So,
Well, they can get out on all fours, man. Perhaps even prefer all four.
Well, what's the
Oh, they're-
difference in the foot?
The foot has long toes like fingers.
Ooh.
It's a grasping foot.
Mm. So they're possibly climbers, would you think, maybe? Or
Yeah, I would say so. Down in Honey Island, he said the first time they saw this thing, they thought it was a pig.
wow, that's crazy.
It was facing away from
It's a
them,
big body shape difference.
and it was down on all fours, and then it stood up and turned around and faced them, and they saw it had these huge eyes and a kind of a mane around the outside of the head.
Mm.
And when it ran off on 2, not 4.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And when they went over there to look at the tracks, they saw where it had come down out of a tree and had scratched the tree coming down.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there goes the grasping type of foot.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get back on. We chased a rabbit here. Let's get back on our trail with the Nephilim and Lovelock Cave. I mean, you had had experience and I definitely have heard of the Nephilim and all that kind of stuff. So when you went to Lovelock Cave and out there, what were you expecting when you went out there? And then what did you find that surprised you?
Well, you didn't really know what to expect, but there's nothing like being there, to get insight. I know that all that bat guano that they took out of there,
Yeah.
they just piled it back in there, so it's kind of a false floor.
Hmm.
When I first started going there, it was empty inside. Now they have an observation deck in there.
Yeah.
When they built the observation deck, they pulled some of the bat guano away from the walls and brought it to the center to level the floor.
Yeah.
And when they did, they exposed a big handprint on the wall.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about. I knew you were the one that said something about that. It was, how big was the hand?
It's at least 18 inches.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just dwarfs a normal sized adult hand.
Well, I mean, we're lucky if we go from pinky to thumb to be like, what, 6 inches, 8 inches maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
So did it look like
And
kind of the situation similar to what the Australian Aborigines do, where they lay the hand and then blow paint all around it, or was it the hand painted, or was it?
No, it wasn't artistic. It was
Okay.
it up on the ceiling is a layer of fat and soot,
Mhm.
and it's hard right now. But if you put your thumb on it and leave it there for a few minutes, it'll soften.
Mhm.
It's like taffy,
Wow.
and it was all over this hand when they stuck it to the wall. And when he pulled it away, it made these little ridges up each finger, from the suction
Oh.
of that stuff. So I know it was done with a hand and not with an artistic representation.
So that let me just follow your train of thought here, maybe. So what you're basically saying, that probably occurred when the red-haired giants were being burned. He probably braced himself, huh?
That's just kind of what I'm thinking. That's the impression I get.
Wow.
There was
Terrifying.
there's lots of lore about giants in that whole area. Not just the battle with the red-haired giants, but also in other incidents. There was a really big one that was just absolutely just killing people left and right at one time. And they had 300 warriors ambushed him,
Wow.
and they watched him coming, and he had a rope full of rabbits on one shoulder and a rope with fish on it in the other. And as he came by, they stood up and they all let an arrow go at him, and he was like a pincushion. But he still made it a half mile before he fell.
Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Wow.
And where he fell was they just covered him with river rock, a smooth rock, be as big as your fist, some of them.
Yes, sir.
And they just covered him, and it left the outline of him. They didn't move him or anything. And it's still there to this day. I saw a picture as late as 1950s. A newspaper man got Indians to show him where it was. So, you still have those incidents. Also, the red-haired giants, the Paiutes told me that they came down the Humboldt River. And the Humboldt River is right there in front of Lovelock Cave. It empties into that old lake.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you follow the Humboldt back up, it'll go right there by Winnemucca, and then it'll cut north, and it'll come out the headwaters. It'll go by what you call the Ruby Mountains, and then the headwaters are in the Jarbidge Wilderness. It's a group of mountains up there, pretty high, and they are famous even to this day for people having these encounters with huge, they're Bigfoot, I guess, but they say they're 10-foot plus.
Wow.
Up in the Jarbidge area. So they're not completely gone. They came from that area, and they likely went back to that area.
So how MK, how big was the giant that they buried in the stones, the one that killed the 300? How big is that giant?
I think that the stones measure 16 feet, so it'll be a little shorter than that.
Yeah.
I have the information on it. I don't have it with this computer.
Yes,
but,
sir.
I have the newspaper article, and they talk about the stride and everything. It's the Indians kept every year they would have a little ceremony and throw more rocks on it. And he said gradually over the years, the newer generations got tired of it and they quit doing it. But it said that he picked up the Paiute warriors and literally held them by the ankles and beat them like a rag.
Use
on
them
the
as
ground.
body clubs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Those are some of the stories that you hear coming from the Middle East.
Yeah, I was just thinking the Afghan cave giant. This sounds a lot like that scenario.
So MK, in Nevada there with Lovelock Cave, now we understand the Paiute kind of chased them into that cave. Do we have any other caves in the area that have stories of giants being inside them?
Yeah, there are other caves that have connected with that same story. I forgot the name of this other cave, but I'd have to look.
Are
I'd
they
have to
more
look 'em
along
up
that
for you.
Humboldt River?
They pretty much
And-
are. Yeah, they're within 5 miles.
That would seem like a
You know,
MO. And
Yeah.
it seems to originate almost coming from southeastern Oregon as well. Do we have any evidence of them coming from that part of Oregon?
well, I don't know about coming from it. I know that they found a couple of skulls in a cave in Oregon that had the really heavy, thick brow
Right.
ridge.
Mhm.
And what you call that? It's a little bit of a sagittal
Mm-hmm.
crest.
Yeah.
And you can find that in a book called Early Man in Oregon.
There you go.
They have pictures, in that book. The man that found it, he couldn't get anybody to even do a study on it.
It
You know?
doesn't
'Cause
surprise me.
Yeah, I didn't want to.
They said that there's no Neanderthals in North
Right.
America.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Right. Yeah, it's missing the three. We have those sagittal sutures that come across her skull. I think 3 of them or something. And these ones don't have the same.
Well, MK, tell us about, speaking of skulls, tell us about your adventure at the museum that you had the chance to go downstairs in the basement. Can you tell us about that story? You and Don?
yeah, that was in Winnemucca. It's
Okay.
called the Humboldt Museum.
Humboldt Museum.
And when I first started going there, this lady ran it named Miss Pansy Lee, and she was a good friend of Don's, and she told the whole story of the red-haired giants, and she had all kinds of displays, and down in the basement, she had skulls in a cabinet. Well, years ago, before I even came along, she let Don go down there and look at those skulls, and at the time, they had one that was double the size of the others. I mean, it was huge.
Wow.
And they had gotten it out of the cave. You could see back guano stains on it. It had a double row of teeth on the top side. The bottom side, it was overcrowded with teeth, but it wasn't double rows. And it had some repair work done on the back of the skull, I guess where he'd been laying, and he'd kind of caved in a little bit. And it had a rocker jaw, which means that the chin turned up.
Oh, wow.
And that is almost exclusively Polynesian.
Mm.
Which, yeah, I just got it made me scratch my head.
Yeah.
Now it doesn't mean that it itself came from Polynesia, but it does mean that it at least has
Connection.
Polynesian heritage. Yeah.
Or Polynesians have heritage from it. That could be.
Yeah, either way. Yeah.
Yeah.
It could go either way.
Yep. I mean, you know all about Easter Island and all the giants that were there that basically ruled the whole Polynesian area, So I wonder if maybe that was their westward journey. Maybe some stopped there and they continued to go west and migrate out in the Polynesian islands and all that stuff out there. So that's fascinating.
Well, it's we don't know. That goes back into the mists of time.
Mm-hmm.
And we get little clues like this rocker jaw is a clue.
Yeah.
But yeah, it causes you to ask more questions. But Don she didn't know that Don had a little disposable camera in his coat pocket.
I'm glad he did.
And he took pictures.
I'm glad he did.
And I have those pictures with me. I have them locked up in a safe.
No men in black suits can get them.
It's MIB proof.
Yeah.
The Smithsonian's coming for you.
Oh.
Well,
or worse.
MK, this may be neither here nor there. I'm just fascinated by it. I don't know why. I was reading a little bit of Sarah Winnemucca's book online earlier, and was it the giants or the Paiute or both that made the reed boats, made the boats out of the tool reeds that they would kind of use?
My understanding that it was the giants.
Okay. I knew I'd read something like that. I don't know why.
It was very similar to the Lake Titicaca.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The Peruvian reed boats that they almost use like surfboards on the oceans.
Doesn't that smack of of some
connections,
migration?
Yeah, migrations, connections. Yeah.
There's also a fish that's in I think Pyramid Lake.
Mm-hmm.
That's only found in Lake Titicaca.
That is really fascinating.
Only other place.
Yes.
Yeah, sooner or later, these things go out of the realm of coincidence. You know what I'm saying? So, you just...
Yeah, some I've heard people say that they didn't believe in coincidence.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe there's not really any coincidences. There's only truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell you,
go ahead.
My realm of coincidences has shrunk incredibly since I've been researching all this stuff. So, yeah. What were you going to say, MK?
I think I remember one of the caves. They call it Leonard's Cave. It's about maybe 4 or 5 miles from Lovelock Cave. There was also some camps, Paiute camps that were out there in the basin. In the 60s, the University of California went out there and was doing some excavations work out there in a Paiute camp. And they piled all their dirt up in a berm, just a big pile of dirt. They used a backhoe. Imagine how tender that was. And the next year when they came, it had done rained some. And exposed a skull that was in that berm. They'd scooped it up and dumped it with the dirt. And this skull is so unusual. You should see it. It is something very primitive looking. It's got like a prognathous face, with the teeth jutting out. Mm-hmm. It's got a bony ridge along the base of the neck. Like if it were fleshed out, it wouldn't have any neck. Mm-hmm. It would look like it had a head sitting on the shoulders.
Wow.
It's got a crest on top, and they said it was automid. Automid is a very rare skull. It's the arrangement of the sutures and stuff. There's only a few cultures that had what you call an Ottoman skull, and most of those were down in Peru and South America. They say that the Caracawas that lived on the coast of Texas that were Ottoman skull, but they were known to be giants. The Caracawas were they 7 feet was real common.
Yeah.
Mm. Wow.
Wow. You say a crest, so I'm thinking something like a mohawk almost going up the middle. Or
It's a ridge.
ridge,
A
yeah.
ridge. Yeah.
wow.
That's
So
fascinating.
we're assuming it was some kind of hominid then.
Well, they didn't find it in the camp, the Paiute camp. They found it outside the camp.
And just
And,
the skull.
Yeah. Well, you don't know because they're scooping it up
Fair
with
enough.
tobacco.
You know,
So I went and located the old dig, and it's sitting there just like the day they walked off from it.
mm,
And there were bones laying all around that thing.
Oh, wow.
I picked one up. It's a real large vertebrae, which is I can show that to you if y'all can y'all see me,
we can
or
see
is
ya.
that
yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can
just
see it.
fine.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
for our listeners, he is holding up an extremely large vertebrae.
Yeah.
and also found Indian corn cobs. They're probably 1,000 years
But
old.
we do understand
Mm.
that the Paiute had groups of individuals who did practice skull worship. I mean, there were skull cults in the Paiute people.
Really,
I didn't know that either. Cool.
And
That's
at least there's rituals associated with the skull. I mean,
Huh.
Like I said, we don't really know half
Mm-mm.
of it.
no, a lot of it's just lost to time.
It's just lost to time.
Yeah, but what's interesting is we can begin to put pieces together through the archaeology, through what we find, but also just through the stories and
The oral
the-
traditions.
the oral traditions, and and even through the Bible, and we can use that a lot to piece a lot of that together to get the nature of a lot of this kind of stuff. So
And that's the whole
it's-
thing
it's
is all
really-
we have is a lot of these oral traditions because it's like you ask the scientific community about the giants in Lovelock Cave and all you're going to get is stonewalled.
Yeah.
Well, it disproves their narrative. I mean, in my opinion. So
Might open up one.
Well, I really,
Past.
I know that they weren't considered to be normal. The Indians didn't see them as neighbors.
mm,
You were in a constant threat. So, yeah, like the big guy that they put 300 arrows in.
I'd imagine anything that's hunting down humans is going to be a problem for humans.
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
They had to do something. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
You or either go out of existence your own self.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let me ask you, MK, and this relates sort of to what we're talking about, but I just want your opinion. You can speculate, and we'll say it's speculation, but I just want your opinion. Do you think that a lot of the mounds, or majority of the mounds that are in the United States, are that they're, if you go deeper into them, are not just Native American?
That's a good question. There's lots of indications that there's influences, at least influences, from faraway places. There's a lot of if you go to the Moundville site there in Alabama, a lot of their copper is indicative of Egyptian,
Wow.
as well as their beliefs. That when they die, they get in a boat and they sail the Milky Way, toward the sun. Very similar. And so, I don't think it's an accident, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I think no one's going to recommend tearing up a mound, but
Yeah.
if you you go to the center of the mound, below the mound, that's where the king's chamber is.
Yeah.
In the
I
pyramid.
wonder if they use like LiDAR or whatever on some of these mounds. If I don't know how much detail you could get from that, but it would be something more than what we have now. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'm sure how deep LiDAR goes. You know, everything's getting cheaper and not and shrinking in size, and they even have LiDAR now that you can fly on a drone.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so you can do your own LiDAR.
Which is great because there's a lot of reticence among scientists to even go this because they consider what we're talking about so absurd they won't even do experiments on it.
Yeah.
So,
well, speaking of
Well,
which,
I mean-
MK, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah,
I was just going to ask you, since I live in not far from them, but the Jaketown mounds. I know you can't just go; it's private property. Have you flown drones over that before, or?
Well, I have, but it's so grown
Yeah.
up. It's so grown up that it's hard.
Yeah.
I've actually just went in there and climbed up on top of it.
Oh wow.
I just wanted to get an idea of it just from the top.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know who owns it, but
Yeah.
I didn't hurt anything, and I came right back down.
Mm.
But the Jaketown mound is so old that a significant part of it is underground.
It's connected
wow.
with that Poverty Point culture, apparently.
Yeah, it's very old. A friend of mine, he did some track hole work out there, and he wasn't on the mound, but he was not far from it. Found a knee joint
Mm.
that was petrified, and he took it to a museum, and they identified it as a camel, the knee joint of a camel.
Well, fair enough.
That's
There are
better
evidence
place.
of camels being in the United States, but quite a long time ago.
That's Ice Age
Yeah.
type stuff.
Yeah, we had some horses and camels here.
And sloths.
The giant
I have
North
a-
American
I have-
sloth.
I have a claw and a toe of a giant ground sloth that came from right here where I live. And that thing was probably 15 or 20 feet tall, when it stood up.
Wow.
It'd go up, it could stand by your house and knock a hole in the top of it. And the roof.
It's amazing. I didn't know. I mean, I guess everything was bigger back then, huh? I mean, wow.
It's megafauna, they
Mhm.
call it.
Mm. So, do you have any interesting stories that of you dealing with giants or searching after giants? I mean, you told us really cool on the last podcast about when you found that lair. Do you have any other interesting stories?
You coming in, at Bluff Creek? Yeah.
Yeah.
That was quite a thing.
Yes, sir.
You have to get me talking. Usually, once you get me talking, I get to remembering a little better. I've been a lot of different places. I've been back and forth across the country, up and down and sideways.
Mhm.
And it's I've been down from Florida, up to the East Coast and the West Coast, and Washington State, Oregon, and California. It becomes like I hate to use the word obsession, but I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
If you're not obsessed, you're probably not going to accomplish much.
You're not going to care enough to look into it.
Right. It almost requires some obsession. And people, it's always been that way. People that got in a covered wagon and loaded their small children up in it and rode for 6 or 8 months across through hostile Indian land to get to California. They were a little obsessed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And because they did that, of course, we we have this sea to shining sea country.
Yeah. We owe a little bit of a debt to those obsessed folks. Maybe.
Yeah. The mounds there in Spiro, Oklahoma, they're kind of different. The stuff that they got out of them were extraordinary. They had incised shells. Y'all know what that is?
No, sir.
They would take a big shell, and then they would cut artwork into it or designs into it. But it wasn't just artwork for the fun of it. This artwork actually symbolized something. This is the same symbols that they found on the Mexican tablets down in Mexico.
Wow.
That goes back 11,000 years. It talks about the continent of Lemuria sinking,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the symbols are the exact same as were in those tablets, and also in some other tablets in Sri Lanka that showed the sun and the rays coming out of the sun, and they twisting as they traveled,
Mm-hmm.
which is something that you could not observe. That's cosmology there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff is just incredible. Also, something that really caught my eye was have an incised shell that it's ringed with ivory-bill woodpecker heads, carved into
Mm-hmm.
it.
Oh, wow.
Ivory-bill woodpecker, they've been extinct for a long time. They were sort of revered among Native Americans. They were the biggest. It was bigger than a chicken, a woodpecker, and it was beautiful. Beautiful bird.
Yeah.
And they used to, your status was by how many ivory bill pelts you wore on your belt. So by the time that Europeans made it here, the ivory bill was already in danger.
Oh, wow.
It didn't last much longer. The last one was in Texas, Louisiana, in the 1940s, early 40s, and they actually filmed a nest of them. And then the Singer Sewing Machine Company cut the tree down, and that was the last anyone saw of one.
Wow.
Texas, that's not
Well-
too far from Natchez, is it?
No, it's not. It's not very far across there. It's named after the
Yeah,
Texas
they were
Indian.
just across the river and were probably
Yeah.
at 1.1 people with the Natchez.
Yeah, they were very similar to the Natchez. They called them cousins.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what. I'll tell you a story about the Texas. Well, the French always were trying to set up trade. When they first came over here,
Mhm.
they had heard about the Texas, so they made the effort to go and find them, and they found them X number of miles away from the river. And when they walked into their camp, they had human heads on poles
Yikes.
all around. And they thought, oh, what have we gotten ourselves into, But as it turned out, the Texas were very willing to trade, and the custom of putting a head on a pole wasn't as bad as it looked. And so they traded some pearl necklaces and stuff to them right there, Johnny, on the spot. And then that night, it came a thunderstorm, and lightning struck their temple.
I think I've heard
had a
this one.
tent-
Yeah.
It had a temple on a mound, and they kept a flame in
Mhm.
there, eternal flame, and it was kept going 24 hours a day. And when that thing burned down, the people went crazy, and they started making sacrifices.
Yeah, they threw an infant in, if I remember correctly.
The the French said that they killed 11 of their own people before they could even be talked out of it.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
You know, the French were just aghast, and these people were crying. I mean, they were in tears. That's how much that temple meant. So it was sitting on top of a mound, the eternal flame, and the Natchez had the same setup. If the two men that kept the flame going, if they let it go out, then they were put to death.
Mhm.
So they got smart and went and made two flames. That way, if one went out, you had another one going.
Yeah. I guess I would do the same thing if my life depended on it.
But if you can kind of stretch things a little bit and imagine that these same people came from out in the Nevada way, where all these giants were, and not only that, but when the Choctaw, they came from out west as well, they brought a Bigfoot with them. They called him Shemp, Shampe, and they built their mound on top of a cave system, and it's called the Mother Mound of the Choctaws. It's out at Natchez, Mississippi, and there that cave system is there because it was an ancient meteor impact crater, and they say that they survived a catastrophe by going down into that cave system. Now they say that Shamp lives there. That's their version of a Bigfoot. And I found the cave and went in it, and you could see where it had people or something had polished the walls because it's tight going in, and the walls were buffed out. Go
Is
ahead.
this Naniwaya or is this a different one?
Yeah, it's 91.
Okay, wow.
Now that the cave part I went to is not the mound. The mound entrance is covered up, but this is another entrance to the same cave system.
Oh, wow.
The Choctaw had so much trouble with Bigfoot sightings that they called a Bigfoot hunter in that they found on the internet, and all he told them was that I found fresh sign, But as soon as he left, they had to call him back because somebody else saw him again. So I don't know if they ever resolved that. I know they shut down. It was what do you call it? It's like a little park. Used to belong to the state, and the state gave it back to the Choctaws. And the Choctaws shut it down because of this Bigfoot flap.
Wow.
And they put a lock on it, and nobody's allowed to go back in there.
And this is Noxapater?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Champ was bad. I mean, bad to the bone. What they say is true,
Yeah.
that he'll eat you. He's cannibalistic.
Oh, okay. Now that makes sense. I was about to ask you, usually Native Americans are so all about the environment, which is a good thing, and want to coexist with what's out there. So I'm like wondering what's so bad about this Bigfoot, but you just explained that for me. He said that they said that he followed them from out west. I don't know what that entails. How many years? How many years ago was that? I mean, how many years ago would that be? Like,
it was a lot of years ago because they'd been here a long time.
Huh.
They said that they carried the bones of their ancestors, and they stopped there. That's where the shaman told them to build a mound, and they put the bones of their ancestors in that mound and built over it. And they also covered up. They had a way to get in the cave for a long time from the mound, but then they covered it up.
And you said this was a cave system, wasn't it?
Right, it's a cave system. It's fractured rock from an impact.
And don't the Choctaw have a creation story about coming up from the earth?
Yeah, that's part of it. They said they survived a catastrophe
Something on
by entering that
the heat of
cave,
the sun or fire from the sun, wasn't it?
something like that. Yeah.
Wow. It's funny how all these pieces just kind of seem to fit together, just all these different stories. They're just, it fascinates me, how one culture could know something about it that another culture knows without any kind of connection, really, at all.
Yeah, well, it seems like you're going circling out too far, and then next thing you know, you're back in again, and you've connected some dots. That it's well worth the effort to look into all the crooks and crannies, turn over rocks, and look under them.
Yeah, I still can't get over the fish that was what lake was that? Lake Titicaca?
Down in
Titicaca.
Yeah,
Peru.
Titicaca. And then it's
that
down in
Peru
Peru,
or-
right?
Or is that Argentina? Okay.
Yeah, it's Bolivia actually. I think.
Yeah. But it's the same kind of fish that was up here in the United States somewhere that they found down
Right,
there. Yeah, yeah.
right. It's
That's-
in that in Pyramid Lake.
Yeah, yeah.
Normally you'd assume some kind of speciation, but it's literally the same
No.
fish. We're not talking about a different kind of beak like finch. So it's like
Yeah.
the same fish.
Yeah.
Well, they say that Lake Titicaca has seahorses.
Oh wow.
Like big ones, not tiny
And
ones.
well, it's the highest lake in the
Right.
world. And, how do you get a seahorse?
Yeah.
Yeah, or seahorses are primarily saltwater too,
That's
right?
right.
I mean,
Yeah, they are.
so that
They
would be a
are.
freshwater seahorse. That's fascinating too.
Well, I'll give you an example. When I was out around Death Valley, they have a place there called Devil's Hole, and you can go down in it, and it's got this clear water and a space between the rocks. And if you put on a diving suit, you go down in there. It opens up, and they happened to be standing there when the water suddenly just erupted and splashed way up on the far wall. And it was in response to an earthquake 400 miles away.
Oh
Mhm.
wow.
Okay.
That's how far that water system went,
Pretty interconnected.
and probably farther than that. They say that they could see, they put up a measuring tape where they could measure the splash. They said that it shook that Devil's Hole. The earthquake in Japan shook it.
That's amazing.
Weird. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Well, there's a little fish living there that don't live anywhere else in the world. They're little, I forgot the name of them. Little blind fish living down in Devil's Hole.
yeah, see, that reminds me of the I don't know what to call it. I don't know whether to call it a conspiracy or a urban myth or the truth or whatever, that there's aqueducts supposedly in the center of the United States. Have you heard about that, MK? The cave system that goes between like the Midwestern states. Have you ever heard of such?
Yeah, I have heard that. As a matter of fact, they say that the United States used to have a submarine that would go down in Lake Walker, Nevada, and come out in the ocean,
Pacific Ocean.
going up in the Pacific Ocean, going under the mountain.
Wow.
Yeah,
Because they won't ever tell you if that's true or not.
Oh
Yeah.
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 I mean, we're talking about stuff that
I
won't
know
tell
one
us true
thing.
or not.
I've never seen a soul on that lake ever. I've never seen anybody standing around or throwing a fishing rod. It's absolutely just devoid of people.
Huh.
So for whatever reason,
That's bizarre.
That's
and
bizarre.
then they have Hawthorne, Nevada, which has almost all of the ammunition the United States has in bunkers. And that's just a short hop from that Walker's Lake. It's like it's all a complex.
Mm-hmm.
That we don't know half of it. That's for sure.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, I'm not even going to go down the rabbit trail of deep underground military bases and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we don't know. We don't know the half of it. We do know, though, going back to the giants, we do know that they have whoever they is, whoever they are. Yeah, they have a keen interest in giant bones, which is fascinating to me. So
Yeah, it's like we don't know, and you're not allowed to ask. That's the problem.
Well, if you go around Pyramid Lake, there's a little town called Nixon. And if you go past Nixon just a little bit on the highway there up on the bluff, there's some ruins. And on those ruins, there's petroglyphs. And the petroglyphs are kind of packed into what you call tufa. It's very, very old formations that form in shallow water. It's like a concretion.
Mm-hmm.
And on that front of that rock is Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Oh wow!
Right.
And they actually say the name Ramses
Interesting.
in Egyptian hieroglyphs. They're the oldest hieroglyphs in North America. They're 10,500 years old.
Yeah, interesting connection there.
Yeah, very interesting connection.
Well, that's like I heard somewhere that they found up in New England, somewhere or up further even from that in the Northeast, a Phoenician stuff up there, Phoenician archaeological stuff, or was it a stone or it was something? Any of you guys know about that? Heard about that?
I had not heard about that one.
It was in New York, I think. It was in yeah. I have to do some more research on that, but I had heard that there was some sort of a Phoenician stone, which that would date back probably about the same time as the Egyptian hieroglyphs. So, yeah, I think there was a lot more people here in America than we know about. It wasn't just the Vikings.
The New York Bale stone.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Googled it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does look like some sort of Semitic alphabet there for sure.
Now, well, when it comes down to like the Natchez Indians, they had a group of Indians that were like their slaves. They were servants.
The stinkers or something like that. Or
yeah, they call them Grigras. And the reason they call them Grigras, they said, is because that's all they ever said. You try to communicate with them, they just grunt. Now, that strikes me as having, potentially being something different there.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they essentially destroyed the Natchez during the French Natchez Wars, the Grigras went back to the woods.
I had heard of them, and there's just so little to know about them. It's just another frustrating group that we have a name and a few details about, and it's just
they gave them like a tribal credit, like they were a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
But if you read what the Natchez said about them, you get a different impression. I don't know. Maybe the Natchez brought somebody with them when they came from out west.
Oh wow,
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, where are they now? That's what I want to know. Where
they just disappeared into the woods.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of like the wild men up in Appalachia. You wonder how many there's these groups. I mean, we know they're in South America, but what if there really is groups of these indigenous tribes that are so well hidden in the woods and have their own language and all that stuff, and we hadn't even discovered them yet. We think America is pretty well, explored, but I just don't think so. I just don't.
There was a man who had to stop on the road way up into Canada. 90% of Canada is unexplored, and he had to stop and let a tribe of First Nations peoples, what they call them there, go by. The unknown tribe. They came out of the woods one way, crossed the road, and went into the woods on the other side.
Fascinating. Yep.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
all these.
They looked just like something from the days of yore.
Mm. Wow.
Now, can you recommend any documentaries or books on the Lovelock Caves, specifically these redhead giants? And
Other than reading the account the Paiutes gave, there's an old book written by Reed. I forgot his first name, Reid, and he wrote extensively on it. And he was there. He was there when they were digging all these mummies out of the cave.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
T.F. Reed or T. Reed or something like that.
Yeah, because otherwise we've got legends and stories that we have to listen to from the people.
It becomes legendary so quick and easy. When they did this excavation work, there was no anthropology to speak of. This was a 19-year-old kid and a missionary that was training for missionary work. And that they got together and went in there and dug it up for the Smithsonian, which Alice Herlichka was the name of the first anthropologist in the Smithsonian. Right. And he was like a real life Dr. Frankenstein. They got these two guys. They had been bunking. The man named Llewellyn Loud had been training as a missionary at the Phoebe Hearst Museum of Anthropology. And she was bunking with the last Indian to come out of the woods. Ever. The last of his tribe. Graham Greene played him in a movie. They called him Ishi. And that's who Llewellyn Loud was bunking with in the same room. And I can't help but believe that Ishi told him all about that kid.
Absolutely. Oral tradition is very strong in the Paiute.
Suddenly he became interested in doing anthropology work instead of going to Africa for missionary work. But they were not trained, and they just went and winged it. They took 10,000 artifacts out of there.
And I wonder how many they kept for themselves.
Well, they found these duck decoys. They found a lot of them down in Florida. A guy had them down there. He just purchased them or something. The state of Nevada tracked them down and got them back. That tells you, that they just went here, there, and everywhere.
So John T. Reed, I think, is the guy.
There you go.
Reid.
Appreciate it. Yeah, he's got some really interesting stuff because he was there for most of it as an eyewitness. And I tell you what is kind of interesting too. Also, that while the Darrington and Llewellyn Loud they were on hiatus, some of the townspeople went in there and dug up a mummy. I mean, a full-size mummy, a giant. And they took it and they whacked his head off.
Okay.
And they boiled the rest of its body. And they made like a tea for a civic club, a booster organization. It's like for your what do you call it? Initiation ceremony?
Hazing.
It's hard to believe that anyone would do that, but they did it. But
nasty, man.
In 1924, that somebody took a picture of that head the giant's head and published it in the newspaper.
Mhm.
And I got a copy of it.
Probably on a piece of microfiche somewhere in there.
I mean, it is
Nice.
somewhere.
Wow.
But I mean, it's not like there's no evidence. There is some evidence.
A lot of legwork.
If you're right, if you're willing to go through the trouble, like my friend Don, he had to kind of sweet talk Pansy Lee into letting him go down there. Oh man, I tell you what, it paid dividends though. And if he had not done that, that's what you call non-conventional research,
Mm-hmm.
and it got him access to that giant skull. So you see, it's not there's stuff out there still yet to uncover.
Yeah, I wish you would have got a picture of that really big skull you were talking about. That would have been really cool.
Oh, I did.
Oh, you did?
I do have pictures.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if that video we watched, if it had any of those pictures in it. I think Skywatch put out with you and Don were in it, and they were talking about that lady. Did y'all videotape her or something?
Oh, I have pictures when I went in there. I don't have her on video, but I got still pictures.
Okay. I mean, that's what it is.
She was a nice lady.
Yeah.
Now if you go in there, they get mad at you if you even mention a giant.
Well, it's the same as
Eh,
it's the same as saying Atlantis. I mean, if you use the word Atlantis in any of your research, they stick you in the Graham Hancock bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how do they think that the Atlantic Ocean got its
Yeah.
name?
Really.
We're gonna quit calling it the Atlantic?
That's right. We
Yeah.
can't call it that no more. It's named after Atlantis, people.
That's right. That's right.
Actually, both of them were named after Atlas, the god Atlas. Even the Aztecs said they came from Atlan.
Yeah. That's
Yeah. Were we talking
Yeah.
about that, Lindsay, a little while ago?
Oh yeah. Well, don't get me talking about my obsession here.
Yeah, right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, Athlon, it means something like place of the heron, but yeah, it sounds eerily like Atlantis.
It's place of the white
Yeah.
heron.
Yeah.
Or egret.
That helps.
Yeah.
The egret.
Well, it helps you narrow it down some.
Yeah.
It's
Possibly
almost like that bird in Egypt that's everywhere.
an
The
ibis.
ibis. It's a nuisance bird, I guess, there now.
That's the symbol of
It
Thoth,
is.
the scribe. They have ibises here.
Yeah, they have a couple in
I
the
see
Oregon
'em.
Zoo.
There are people who believe that the Fertile Crescent is the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I mean, the entire Gulf Coast of southern United States.
Wow.
They make a pretty good case for it. I've listened to it, the argument, and that the Mississippi is actually the Nile.
Right.
That is interesting.
That is
Well,
interesting.
where was it we were seeing the Egyptian hieroglyphs? That was in Nevada, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And didn't someone say that there's Egyptian stuff they found in the Grand Canyon a while back?
Yeah. Sure did. That's when the Smithsonian dynamited the cave shut.
Right.
After they looted it.
And we have the indigenous peoples stories about individuals that were pretty much textbook Egyptian.
There's also some other Egyptian sites around North America,
Mm-hmm.
and other continents as well. Australia's got some.
Wow.
Yeah.
Those people, you see that big boat they had buried by the pyramid.
Mhm.
They found it in. That thing was seaworthy.
Right.
And they didn't make it for
Ocean
nothing.
worthy, not just cruising around the Mediterranean.
Right. It'd take you across.
Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about ocean going boats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If Thor Heyerdahl can make it in a reed boat,
Mhm.
you know that thing.
Fair enough.
Yeah, true. So let me ask you this. This is like a $10,000 question. And if you don't want to answer it, MK, I totally get you. But so what is your like cosmology or speculation or origin of the Nephilim and how that came about?
I accept what the Bible says about them.
Okay.
You know, I don't think that the Bible tells us everything there is
Right.
to know, but you know, it's not necessary to fill in all the gap. God has a book of instructions, but you know, it's not going to be the complete mind of God.
Mhm.
You know, who could ever know His mind completely?
Yeah.
It's just to get you by.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's that they came from the fallen ones that came to the earth and inhabited with women. I believe that to be true.
Yeah.
But their source, we don't know or fully understand the other places. You know,
Yes, sir.
heavenly realm. And what kind of life forms that live there.
Right.
They're apparently they're able to construct a body in an impromptu way. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
That's very, very powerful. So
Yeah.
what do you think about people out there who talk about the connection between the Nephilim and the Bigfoot? Do you think there's a connection there, or do you think Bigfoot is more of an animal?
I don't have the foggiest idea. I don't think it's an animal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's too much going for
Well,
it.
it's either, or Heidelbergensis, right?
There's obviously man-like creation on the earth. Adam and Eve. You would be very shocked if you could have seen Adam before he was rebuilt. He was fleshly. He was an angelic expression in the flesh. And whenever he kept requesting to become like an animal, when that was finally done for him, you get us. So we don't look anything like Adam did.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, he didn't have a belly button for one.
Well, it was like I said, you'd probably be shocked.
Well, I think MK. This is kind of what I call shade tree theology, but I think they had more use of their brains than we do. You know?
Oh, maybe they didn't make wise decisions.
No. There's
At least not when it came to fruit.
Well, you and I both know there's a big difference between being smart and being wise. Well, that's all fascinating stuff. So, MK, I'm gonna wrap up our conversation here. Look, this is fascinating. I love just hearing your stories.
It was great.
You know what? You know what I feel like, MK? I feel like we're sitting on the front porch and we're just like shooting the breeze. You know what I'm saying? And I love hearing these stories.
Well, it's good to hear what other people have done and
Well, what you've done.
compare notes.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like y'all aren't doing anything. Believe me, having a podcast is no small thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you go to do all your talking.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
I just want to know so much more. And it's like every time I have you or somebody like you on our show, I just learn even more and more. Yeah, Lindsay's been around this stuff a lot longer than I have, and even BT has. And so I get my mind blown all the time. But it's like the stranger it is to me, the more likely I am to believe it now. It's really strange. So,
Nice.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
MK, we appreciate you being on our
I
show.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
coming
Yes,
back.
Thank you.
Thank you much. Thanks for listening and supporting us. And remember, stay naturally supernatural.